I'm about to do the one thing realtors are never supposed to do. I'm going to tell you exactly where you should never buy a new construction home in Dallas. Well, hello, I'm Wendy Pinnell, and when you think about home sweet home, I hope you think about it in terms of an investment too. All right, we're talking about like a house-shaped piggy bank, right? With that in mind, there are 6 kinds of neighborhoods you need to walk away from. All right, it doesn't matter how affordable they are, what kind of incentives they're offering, or how convenient the commute is, okay? And here's the reason why, okay? There is enough new construction in Dallas that you don't have to settle. All right, well, let's jump right in. The first kind of new construction neighborhood you should never buy in are those that are surrounded by older, broken down neighborhoods. And you'll find quite a few of these communities in established older cities where there would be like, a parcel of land that was just left undeveloped over the years. And some developer, driving by, they just couldn't help but see those dollar signs, so they decide to develop it. Well, occasionally these kinds of neighborhoods can be a dream come true type of material when it comes to your commute, okay? And here's why. Whenever a main business hub is, right, whenever it's first built, homes begin to be built around it right away, right? So a lot of cities end up with the oldest homes being the ones closest to the major business hubs. Okay, so now that I have the wheels turning in your head, have you ever found yourself in an area like that? Right, you'll be driving by these old rickety homes, maybe built in the 40s and 50s, and then you'll stumble upon like a brand new subdivision like out of nowhere. But okay, I can hear you asking, what's the problem with that? Why is that a bad thing? New construction with a short commute sounds pretty good to a lot of you, I'm sure. But hang on just a second, because sometimes these things really are too good to be true. Now, one very obvious problem with these kinds of communities is that they're not aesthetically appealing. With your older neighborhoods, you're not going to have HOAs. So what you run into is just a serious wild card when it comes to the upkeep in these neighborhoods, right? Okay, because these homes are really old, right? And they're going to age with time, right? So what are you gonna see? You're gonna see like the siding is going to be rotting, right? The fences will be sagging. And this is just the natural progression of time. But older neighborhoods, they won't have HOAs. So there's no, big brother, so to speak, to make sure that the homes all stay well kept. Also, anytime you run into a neighborhood without an HOA, you're already running the risk of, like things like broken down cars, odd paint colors, broken fences, motor homes in driveways. You're dealing with like a whole lot of unmaintained yards. And before you say, hey, I can deal with that, I can get over that, just remember that the next person to buy your home, they might not be able to get over it. So if you see your home as an investment, you don't want to have to be worrying about any neighbors' properties becoming eyesores, just due to the natural progression of time. And by the way, I'm not by any stretch of the imagination a cheerleader for HOAs, but to the extent that they maintain the appearance of a neighborhood, I think that is an argument in their defense. And that's not just me saying that either. First Home Mortgage shares how this could actually help sell your home for a higher amount too. They say not only does this make the neighborhood look more pleasant for residents, but it can even lead to higher home values. A 2019 study found that homes that are part of an HOA had prices that were on average 4% higher than similar homes not in an HOA. Now, obviously, I'm not necessarily advocating that you should race out and buy within an HOA, okay? Because goodness knows there aren't enough reasons to not do that as well. But it is something to keep in mind if you have to drive through an older neighborhood that doesn't have an HOA before getting to your own neighborhood. All right, next up. You never want to buy in a new construction community where all the home prices are the same, okay? You want to do your best to be surrounded by high-priced homes that are making your home more desirable and more valuable. We have entire suburbs in the Dallas area that tend to be this way, but we also have pocket communities everywhere, and these are just less than ideal, all right? Like what comes to mind is like many neighborhoods in Forney, okay? These are examples of that. The entire city's median sales price is almost exactly the same as the majority of their neighborhoods. And many of those neighborhoods have almost all the same values as well. So there's so much sameness in one city. For example, okay, the average sales price In Forney's Briarwood Hills subdivision is $356,000. In Devonshire, right, subdivision nearby, the average sales price is $361,000. Okay, so both subdivisions are very close in price, and in fact, the whole city of Forney as a whole has a median sales price of $349,000. It's not really what you want to see, okay? Now, compare this to Melissa, okay? Their Liberty subdivision, it has a median sales price of $695,000, and you can pick up a home of $500,000 from the same subdivision. There are also homes selling for as high as $900,000 there. So talk about a great place to own a $500,000 house. The value of your house is going to be greatly affected by those $900,000 house neighbors. Now, before you get the wrong idea, I'm not saying Devonshire or Briarwood Hills are bad neighborhoods, but from a tactical standpoint, resale can be tough, okay? Let me explain. When you try to sell in an area with all similar home prices, there's nothing to distinguish your home from all the other homes that are priced the same. You end up with, 3 or 4 homes all priced exactly the same as yours. So why should anyone buy your home over the other? And what if you go out and upgrade your home in order to distinguish it? Okay, well now your home is over improved for the area. So too much supply of the same thing will inevitably make it harder to sell. So how much better if your home is the least expensive one in the area? Moving on, you also never want to buy in a neighborhood where major roads may come through. Now, obviously, don't buy in a neighborhood where a main road already cuts through the middle of it, okay? But you also want to consider the possibility of future major roads being built as well. I mean, maybe the neighborhood has a country road cutting through it that could eventually become a major highway as the area grows. Salina comes to mind when I think about this, okay? This is an excellent example. The North Texas Tollway Authority describes a DNT Phase 4 project will extend the tollway 13.7 miles north of US 380. When this extension is complete, it will provide a direct link between downtown Dallas and the growing communities in Collin and Denton counties. Now take a look at a map and you'll see how this could really affect Salina in a massive way. Right now, when you cross 380, the road becomes kind of like rural-like. It's a country-like. After the project is completed, there will be a major highway crossing through the middle of numerous communities on both sides of the tollway. The NTTA will be taking this humble little road, right? Cute little road right now, and turning it into a highly trafficked tollway. And if you're not quite seeing the problem with this, think about the Dallas North Tollway right now, okay? What runs along both sides of it, right? Retail, okay? Tons and tons of retail. We're talking restaurants, Walmarts, major stores, okay? Now think, do you really want your yard backing up to all that retail and traffic? I mean, just imagine how bad the traffic will become if your main way to get out of the community connects directly to the tollway, and if you end up having to go through a bunch of retail to get there. So what used to take you 5 minutes now takes you 15 or even 25 minutes if you catch too many red lights. As of now, the Dallas North Tollway north of 380, it really does look like a meandering, pleasant road, but it's not going to stay that way. According to the Dallas Morning News, between 2022 and 2026, the Salina Economic Development Corps expects the population just within the city limits to grow from around 30,000 to almost 54,000 residents. They go on to explain that at full build out, it is estimated that Salina will have a population of around 380,000. With the main route in and out of Salina eventually becoming the Dallas North Tollway, it's not going to stay a peaceful, winding road that you love coming home on after a long day. So this is something you especially need to look out for if you're buying in a rapidly growing city, okay? We're talking cities like Salina to the north, Melissa to the northeast, or Hazlet to the west. Before deciding on a community, take a close look at those roads. Okay, our fourth kind of neighborhood that you should never buy in is one that's on the bad school side. Now, I realize that probably kind of sounds strange, so let me explain. There are numerous beautiful neighborhoods, okay, known for being in outstanding school districts that are actually split right within the neighborhoods between being in a really great ISD and a not as greatly rated ISD. And again, Salina comes to mind, okay? They are a great example of this. Many communities up there like Light Farms, Mustang Lakes, they're partially in Prosper ISD and partially in Salina ISD, okay? So if you're not familiar with those ISDs, Prosper ISD is much more highly rated and Salina is more moderately rated. So what do you see in those neighborhoods? Well, the homes on the Prosper ISD side, they're not easy to get your hands on, okay? They're selling out really fast. Buyers are wild about Prosper ISD and many won't even consider any other school districts in the area. Another example is the Harvest community in Argyle, okay? Part of it is within the A-rated Argyle School District, while the other part is in the B-rated Northwest School District. So be sure you don't go in assuming you know the school district just because you're close to the district you want. Okay, you always verify. Now, I know you're in the middle of being totally wowed by your new home, right? But don't forget to ask. What we don't want is for you to pay a higher price for a premium school district and find out you're not actually in it. And while we're on that note, don't trust the MLS listing either, okay? Always check for yourself. Realtors almost always put a verbiage in their listing saying that the buyer must do their own due diligence. So you would be surprised how often simple information like a school district on an MLS listing turns out to be wrong. If you're looking at your home as an investment, you need to be aware that school districts and property values are closely correlated. All right, I love how Angela Colley with Open Door puts it. She says, while the old real estate adage may have been location, 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 perhaps today's real estate motto should be schools, schools, schools. She goes on to say home values inside top-rated school districts were 49% higher than the national median home price, according to a 2016 study by Realtor.com, which analyzed data from the residential listing database and school district ratings from greatschools.org. In fact, right now in Texas, there is a lawsuit pending against the Texas Education Agency. Aaron Jones reports that dozens of school districts in North Texas say they're fighting back against the Texas Education Agency's new accountability ratings system. All right, so what's all the fuss about? Well, the TEA changed their ratings criteria without giving school districts enough notice. As Jones reports, now several North Texas school districts, including Dallas, Fort Worth, and Prosper ISDs, are suing. Okay, so what's such a big deal about a letter grade? Okay, what about that makes it worth suing over? Well, Dallas ISD Superintendent Dr. Stephanie Elizalde, okay, she hits the nail on the head when she says this: we all know that parents look at these letter grades when they're choosing where to live. She continues, this could have an impact on property values and student enrollment. And then she sums it up this way. She says, anytime you're talking about student enrollment, you're talking about dollars. So you know what? If school districts take ratings this seriously, okay, we need to take them seriously too. Next up, don't ever buy in a neighborhood where there's no architectural diversity. Now, do you know what kind of neighborhood I'm talking about? Okay, they're pretty easy to spot. In this type of community, all of the homes look pretty much the same, okay? There may be like one version that's a one-story and one that's a two-story, but that's typically it, right? And all of the one-stories match each other and all of the two-stories match each other. And often they'll look very boxy. There won't be any kind of nice front elevation. And by the way, if you're wondering what that word means, okay, it doesn't mean to elevate something. It's what the front of a house looks like, or more specifically, the home's exterior design. You've probably heard, or read about elevation A, B, and C when you're looking at new construction. Both the city and the developer will have a say in the architectural diversity of a neighborhood. And I've seen neighborhoods where the entire street looked almost exactly the same. Okay, all it looked like was like just a big row of boxes. Well, now that we've identified them, what's the big problem with them? Well, think again about when you get around to selling. You want there to be unique attributes about your home. Okay, you want your home to be distinct from others so that your home can compete with others. Okay, ideally, you want to see lots of different homes, different elevations, different colors of brick, different roof pitches. Okay, you get the idea? It's what gives the neighborhood character, and character gives value. Moving on, don't buy in a neighborhood where there are no restrictions on how many homes can become rentals. Now, this one may require a little more work to find out, but it's 100% worth it. Okay, each developer and builder will have different rules on this, so make sure you don't just assume, okay? Plus, once the builders and developers, once they've all left the community, the HOA will have rules on this, so you need to check with them too. What you want to know, okay, you want to know all three, but especially the HOA, since it will rule the roost once the developer and the builder have moved on. Now, some builders and developers will allow 5 rentals a month or even 20 when they're in that new construction phase. Some won't allow any, and then some will have no restrictions on rentals at all. Now, you might be wondering, what difference does that make whether a home is rented or owned? And that's a good question. With a rental, you have a couple of problems. The first one is the owner isn't there, so they don't know if the outside of the home needs paint or if the fence is in bad shape. And then you have the resident who can see everything, but they're not allowed to fix anything. Right? A tenant isn't allowed to go in and replace the fence or paint the outside of the house. So it's a problem of one person not seeing it and the person who is seeing it not being allowed to do anything about it. So kind of just based on that situation, you can tend to have a home that isn't as well maintained. Another thing is the nature of renting is that it tends to be more transitory, okay? For example, you're moving to Dallas and you want to get to know it for a year before deciding where to buy. Well, that's a really common thing to do. But for the homeowners in a neighborhood with rentals, okay, that means constant turnover. You just get to know your neighborhood and they move. So naturally, you've brought your home, you want to put down deep roots, and it would be nice if your neighbors did too. So that really makes it worth your research in the beginning. Okay, what you want to find out is how many homes in this new construction neighborhood can be sold as rentals. If the answer is there are no limitations at all right, you need to realize how much turnover that could mean in future years. In this way, HOAs can actually be a great protection to have over your community. Some HOA rules will limit the percentage of investment properties that can be sold within the neighborhood. Some will require that the HOA board approve any lease applicants. They might also have rules about where a for lease sign can be posted. Another great one is the requirement that a buyer must live in the home for 1 year before the home can be leased. And that alone deters a large number of investors. You know, this is a situation where an HOA is being used in a good way. But like I said, I am definitely not a cheerleader of HOAs. So many times there's just an abuse of power and fraud and just ridiculously excessive fees. In fact, I did a whole video about HOAs out of control that you may want to watch right here. In the meantime, Wendy out.